Scary telling.
I wake up at 7 a.m. and begin my daily routine. It's been the same for as long as I can remember. Take a bath, get dressed, eat breakfast, and start work at 9 a.m. It's a simple routine, but it helps me stay focused and productive throughout the day. However, lately, I've been noticing some strange occurrences in my apartment. At first, it was just small things like objects moving on their own or strange shadows appearing out of nowhere. I brushed it off as my imagination or maybe just a trick of the light. But as time went on, these occurrences became more frequent and intense. I started to feel like there was something in my apartment with me, something that wasn't quite right. The hairs on the back of my neck would stand up, and I would feel a chill run down my spine. I tried to ignore it, to focus on my routine and my work, but it was getting harder and harder. Sometimes I would catch a glimpse of a shadow out of the corner of my eye, and when I turned to look, there was nothing there. Other times, I would hear strange noises, like someone whispering or footsteps in the hallway. But when I checked, there was no one there. It was starting to affect my work too. I couldn't concentrate, and I found myself making mistakes that I wouldn't normally make. I tried to push through it, to keep to my routine, but it was getting harder every day. One day, as I was getting ready to take my morning bath, I heard a strange noise coming from the bathroom. It sounded like a faint whisper, but I couldn't make out what it was saying. I hesitated for a moment, but then I shrugged it off and continued with my routine. I took my bath, got dressed, and ate breakfast. But as I sat down to start work, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I turned around to look, but there was no one there. I tried to focus on my work, but I just couldn't concentrate. The feeling of being watched was too strong. As the day went on, the occurrences became more frequent and intense. Objects were moving on their own, and the shadows seemed to be getting closer. I was starting to feel like I was going crazy, but I knew I had to push through it. I couldn't let this affect my routine or my work. So I took a deep breath and tried to focus on the task at hand. But little did I know, things were about to get a lot worse. I entered the bathroom, as I had done countless times before. I looked into the mirror and stared at my reflection until I closed my eyes, just like I always did. But when I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in my bathroom anymore. Instead, I found myself standing in the middle of a dark forest. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and something rustled in the bushes nearby. I felt my heart racing and my palms starting to sweat. I looked down and saw a dismembered body lying at my feet. I recoiled in horror and tried to take a step back, but my feet wouldn't move. I was frozen in place, staring at the gruesome scene in front of me. As I stood there, trying to process what was happening, I heard a voice inside my head. It was a low, menacing voice that seemed to be coming from all around me. "Don't interrupt our routine," it said. I tried to call for help, to scream, to do anything to get out of there. But the voice just kept repeating the same phrase over and over again. Suddenly, everything went black. I felt like I was falling, like the ground had dropped out from under me. I was spinning, tumbling through the darkness. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it was over. I was back in my bathroom, staring at the familiar locked door. I stumbled backwards, collapsing onto the ground. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I felt like I was going to be sick. What had just happened? Was it real? Or was it just a nightmare? I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. I knew that something was terribly wrong, and I was starting to realize that it had been wrong for a long time. As I sat there, gasping for breath, I knew that I had to investigate further. I couldn't just ignore what had happened or pretend that everything was fine. Something was very, very wrong, and I needed to get to the bottom of it. I knew that something was terribly wrong, and I needed to investigate further. I couldn't just ignore what had happened or pretend that everything was fine. Something was very, very wrong, and I needed to get to the bottom of it. I started to pay closer attention to my apartment, looking for anything that seemed out of place. I noticed that some of the furniture was different than I remembered, and that there were strange marks on the walls that I couldn't explain. As I continued to investigate, I discovered a door that I had never seen before. It was hidden behind a bookshelf, and it took me a while to figure out how to open it. When I finally managed to get it open, I was shocked by what I saw. The room beyond was dark and musty, and it was filled with strange equipment that I didn't recognize. As I looked around the room, I realized that it was some kind of laboratory. There were test tubes and beakers, and strange machines that hummed and whirred. And then I saw it, a cage in the corner of the room. Inside the cage was a person, their eyes wide with fear. They were staring at me, pleading for me to help them. I was horrified. I didn't know what to do. Was this some kind of sick experiment? Who was behind it? I knew that I needed to get out of there, but I didn't want to leave the person behind. I managed to find a key and unlock the cage, helping the person to their feet. They were disoriented and scared, and they kept asking me what was happening. I didn't know what to tell them. All I knew was that we needed to get out of there. As we left the room, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I knew that whoever was behind this operation was coming, and we needed to move quickly. We managed to find a door that led outside, and we ran as fast as we could. We were in some kind of industrial area, with factories and warehouses all around us. I turned to the person I had rescued and asked them if they knew where we were. They shook their head, saying that they had been kidnapped from their home and brought here. As we ran through the streets, we heard sirens in the distance. I knew that the police were on their way, and I felt a sense of relief. Maybe we would finally be safe. But as we turned a corner, we saw a group of people in lab coats waiting for us. They were armed, and they looked like they meant business. I knew that we were in trouble. We had stumbled onto something much bigger than we could have ever imagined, and now we were in the middle of it. The people in lab coats were closing in on us, and I could see the fear in the person I had rescued. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was pounding in my chest. Suddenly, I heard the voice again. It was the same low, menacing voice that I had heard in the forest. "Don't be afraid," it said. "We're not going to hurt you." I knew it was a lie, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of calm wash over me. It was like the voice was inside my head, controlling my thoughts and emotions. The people in lab coats surrounded us, and I could see that they were armed with tranquilizer guns. They didn't look like police or government officials, they looked like a private military organization. The person I had rescued started to panic, and I tried to reassure them that everything was going to be okay. But I knew that we were in deep trouble. The leader of the group stepped forward, his eyes cold and calculating. He looked me up and down, like he was trying to size me up. "You're a freelancer, aren't you?" he said. "You work from home, and you don't have any family or friends to miss you." I didn't know how he knew that, but I knew that he was right. I was alone, and I was vulnerable. The leader continued to talk, but I couldn't focus on what he was saying. The voice in my head was getting louder, drowning out everything else. It was telling me that I didn't have to be afraid, that everything was going to be okay. It was like it was trying to hypnotize me, to make me forget about everything that had happened. But I couldn't forget. I couldn't ignore the fact that people were being kidnapped and killed, that I had been a part of it without even realizing it. I knew that I had to fight back, to resist the mind control that was trying to take over me. But it was getting harder and harder to focus. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the voice went quiet. The leader of the group had signaled for his men to move in, and I knew that I was in for a fight. I tried to defend myself, to protect the person I had rescued, but it was no use. The tranquilizer dart hit me, and I felt myself falling to the ground. As I slipped into unconsciousness, I knew that I had failed. I had failed to uncover the truth, and I had failed to protect myself and the person I had rescued. But I also knew that I wasn't going to give up. I would keep fighting, no matter what. I woke up in a small, sterile room. My head was pounding, and my body felt heavy and sluggish. I tried to sit up, but my hands and feet were bound. I looked around the room, trying to figure out where I was. It looked like a hospital room, but there were no windows and no doors. As I struggled to free myself, I heard a voice on a speaker system. It was the same low, menacing voice that I had heard before. "Welcome to our facility," it said. "We apologize for the inconvenience, but we needed to bring you here to make sure that you understand the importance of our routine." I was terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen to me, and I didn't know how to get out of there. But then I remembered the person I had rescued. They were still out there, still in danger. I couldn't give up now. I started to look around the room for anything I could use to break free. I found a metal rod under the bed, and I started to work on the ropes that were binding my hands. It took a long time, but eventually, I managed to break free. My hands were sore and raw, but I didn't care. I had to keep going. I left the room and started to explore the facility. It was a maze of corridors and rooms, and I didn't know where to go. But I knew that I had to find the person I had rescued and get them out of there. As I wandered the halls, I heard screams and cries for help. It was coming from a room down the hall, and I knew that I had to investigate. I kicked the door open, and I was horrified by what I saw. There were rows of cages, each one holding a person who had been kidnapped and brought there. I searched the cages until I found the person I had rescued. They were terrified, but when they saw me, they broke down in tears of relief. I knew that we had to get out of there, but I also knew that we couldn't just leave the other people behind. So we started to unlock the cages, one by one, and set the people free. As we made our way through the facility, we started to encounter resistance. The people in lab coats were trying to stop us, but we fought back with everything we had. It was a brutal fight, but we eventually managed to overpower them. We made our way to the exit, and we burst out into the sunlight. It was over. We had broken the routine, and we had freed the people who had been kidnapped. But I knew that it wasn't going to be easy. We had a long road ahead of us, and we had to figure out how to put our lives back together. As I looked around at the people we had rescued, I knew that we were all going to be okay. We had each other, and we had the strength to keep fighting, no matter what.